Yeah.
So are we on air now?
We are on air already.
We're sort of on air. Okay, so we were just, for all of our viewers, we were just talking about the rules for bad words, for cussing and swearing, because I'm a very bad cusser and swearer. And Florian tells me there are no rules. I should cuss as much as I want. And last time it was a little disappointing because I was on good behavior. So I'll try to be worse this time.
And actually, I saw on your website, and so first of all, thanks again for taking the time to have a talk with me, a Kynotec. And last time you didn't have the Kynology website.
No, we didn't.
So this is like a newborn.
Yeah, so let's just talk about that right up front. So this is the small company that we've started for canine education. The tagline is Canine Education for Serious Students of Dog Learning, Behavior, and Training. And we now have a website, which is Kynology.org. You notice I spell it in the Germanic way, right? Like for my fellow Kynologen in German-speaking countries, because I was very influenced by German dog culture early in my career, and I'm still very influenced by German dog culture. And so now we have a website, Kynology.org. I'd love to encourage your viewers and listeners to go to it to see what we're doing. It's not a social website. It's not a social channel thing. It's about information about dogs' behavior, dog training, and so forth. And we'll touch on it more as we go through the interview, and I'll talk about upcoming events and things like that.
Yeah, and we will for sure at the end of our talk. Let's take 2 or 3 minutes to talk about the upcoming events.
That sounds very
Kynology 4, etc. Because also online attendance is possible, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually just logged in myself, so I have an account now. So
that's good.
Ready to purchase.
I'm pleased with that. That's very good. I'd like to get a lot of traffic to the site. Not because we're going to annoy people with emails about somebody had a birthday or whatever. We don't give a shit about people having birthdays. All it's about is more news of the science of dog training and more opportunities to study the science of dog training with us.
Nice. Great. So more about the Kynology event later. So we just talked about the website. You didn't have it last time, so we have already had one interview or one conversation, and almost 2 years ago, people really liked it.
It was almost 2 years ago. Wow.
I think so. Wow. I think so. Maybe it's a little more than 1 year ago.
That's why I can't remember what we talked about. The fact that I'm an old man and that it was that long ago.
Yeah, I totally lost the feeling of time. This is now, I think, episode 108 or 109.
Wow.
So we've already had a few conversations, and I'm really happy about it. But I'm
very excited about being on the program because I perceive it as a very serious sort of a program about dog training and dog behavior and all the things that have to do with dog sport and the training of service dogs. And in particular, it's an opportunity for me to reach out to people in what I'll call the old world, Belgium, France, Austria, Germany, maybe other parts of the old world. So it's an audience that I'm very interested in connecting with, partly because my influences are European, right? Like I fell in love with working dogs because I became acquainted with European working dog culture and sport and language. And so it's an audience I love talking to because there's an element of seriousness, of intellectual seriousness that I responded to very early on. Like it was not just the opportunity to work with dogs with my hands that made me commit myself completely to dog training when I was a kid. It was the opportunity to engage myself with dogs intellectually. It sort of gave me my thing that I was going to think about for the rest of my life. And so I feel a debt of gratitude to European dog culture and very much want to connect with representatives and participants in it.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you do so, because I really enjoyed it, and in preparation for this conversation now, I listened. I think the very first time having a second interview with someone, and this was the very first time that I was listening through the whole conversation again, and I really enjoyed it. I made some notes. Sent you this little summary and some of the points that I would like to.
I'm very pleased, A, that you listened to the interview again, B, that you thought it was good. Now, I have a funny story to tell you. One of my very greatest influences is Helmut Reiser, right?
Yeah.
So Helmut is just the guy, and he's the person who I encountered Helmut when I was about 22 or 23 years old. I had become very, very interested in working dogs, but did not have any theory to think about where dog training was concerned. And Helmut Reiser comes in, shakes everything up, changes everybody's language in North America, and kind of committed me to a particular direction, not just in dog training, but in my life. So he's a really, really big deal. I have an interview scheduled with him in a couple of weeks. I'm really excited about, and I'm going to ask him about his influences. Right? I'm not going to ask him about RSV 2000, any of that kind of stuff. I'm going to say, when you were young and you were falling in love with dogs, who influenced you? And I think he's going to say Bernhard Mendel, who he calls Bernhard Mendel, who he referred to in one of his slideshows as der Nestor von modernen Ausbildung.
Okay.
Right? Der Nestor. So I want to talk to him about Bernhard Mendel. So anyway, my funny story is, after my interview with you, how did it go? After my interview with you, I got a friend request from Helmut Reiser on my Facebook. And I was like, do you know the expression fangirling? That's like if you're into K-pop and you get to meet your, like your K-pop band. So I'm fangirling over Helmut Reiser, going, oh my God, Reiser wants to be friends with me on Facebook. This is so fucking cool. I have arrived, Reiser wants to be friends with me.
Yeah.
So just before the Kynology 3 event, I sent Reiser a request to use one of his slides from his slideshow where he mentions Bernhard Mendel, right? And I said, may I please use this and make the reference and so forth. And incidentally, I was so pleased to receive your request for Facebook friendship, and it means a lot to me. And I assume it's because of the interview I did with Florian and Kynotec and so forth. And he said, yeah, no, it wasn't me. Someone uses my name on the internet. I do not do Facebook.
Okay, that's good. Fuck.
Yeah, so I remain nobody, right? I remain nobody where Reiser's concerned.
Nice.
So that's
a real fun story.
That was my confession. Reiser doesn't know who I am or fucking care. So, yeah.
But you could use his presentation.
Yeah, he was very. I've talked to him. We had a meeting, and he was very polite and helpful, and said, yes, by all means use the slideshow, and he consented to an interview with me, and so we'll go from there.
That's cool. So apart from not being friends on social media with Helmut, what else did happen in the past months or year?
Oh, quite a lot. So, as we discussed before we went on air, I got married, and my wife and I are partners in this Kynology business, and she's the smart one who does all the internet and all the digital stuff, and I just sit around and think about science and dog training. It's absolutely great. And I am wrapping up my career with the United States Department of Defense and getting ready to retire. And we've done a lot of traveling, and I'm doing all of those things that you do when you think about making a sharp right turn in your life. So very soon I'm going to make a sharp right turn in my life, which doesn't mean stopping working. I think it means working harder than ever, but working on the things I want to work on, and nothing but the things I want to work on.
So please allow me the question. I hope it doesn't sound rude, but the reason for retirement is age-wise, or
Well, I am able to retire because I'm now
yeah,
old enough, right? So
yeah,
I'm about to hit what the U.S. government calls full retirement age.
that was a I'm going
Yeah,
for.
so
Okay.
I could retire anytime I
Hmm.
want, but it
Hmm.
would have been a dumb thing to do. Now it's
Yeah,
going to
I
be a
understand.
smart thing to
Yeah,
do. And my
yeah,
reason for retiring is really that I want to study. I mean, honestly,
mm,
this is what I want to do because it's been many years since I was in grad school and my job was to study science. And I had a relationship with science at the time that was based on fear
yeah,
because I was trying to get my PhD and I didn't feel smart. I felt stupid. I felt more
mm,
stupid than anybody I studied with or studied under. And so the science that I was reading both interested me and also really scared me. And what I've discovered in reading the same science and more contemporary science in recent years for kynology is that the fear is gone and nothing remains but the delight and the interest.
hmm,
So, what I want to do with my life is I want to exercise. I want to take good care of myself, maybe get a
nice.
puppy and start training my own dog and
Mm,
study. That's what I want to do.
yeah,
Yeah. And spend a lot of time with my wife and travel around the United States.
that sounds like a really good plan. So you said that you felt like stupid, not knowing enough.
Oh yeah. Yeah, not
Uh,
not
is this
not
something
only
that is this something that hunts you up
oh, yeah.
till today?
It's a lifelong feeling, right? Like I've never felt equal to the people that I wanted to emulate. And I always had it's called imposter syndrome, right? I've
Yeah.
always had the fear that people would discover that this guy who was supposed to be smart really
Mm,
wasn't that smart. And the older I get, the better I handle it.
mhm,
Um, and in a funny kind of way, this is a little bit more of a personal conversation than a dog conversation. For me, old age is going to be about reapproaching issues in my life that I never satisfactorily solved. And one of them is my relationship with science and my relationship with things that I find hard to understand. And I want to
mm,
bring the fascination with things that are hard to understand to the fore and push into the back the feeling of inadequacy that you have when you read something 3 times and you still can't understand it.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. I hope it's okay for you to also dive into this personal stuff, because I think good dog training requires some sort of holistic approach, and I s- I think many people, including myself, have these moments where we keep reading things, not understanding, or
Yeah.
thinking that
Yeah.
the more we the more we seem to know, the less we have the feeling that we know anything. Like,
Yeah, I'm
um,
just afraid that your viewers and listeners will find my, my personal journey not of all that much interest. But I'm certainly willing to talk about it. What yeah, the thing about dog training is that it is a personal journey
yeah,
because you are absolutely on your own with a dog, right?
mm,
Even if you have good coaching from somebody, you are still absolutely on your own with a dog, making dozens of decisions in real time that have to be made quickly and efficiently,
mm,
and with not necessarily immediate readout on whether it was a good decision or a bad decision. So the way I
yeah,
describe dog training is as a long, long series of lonely decisions. And it
mm,
involves your character, it involves who you are, it involves your self-control, it involves your ability to handle discouragement and keep going. It involves your ability to care for and love an animal that is not going to return love in the way that you expect from a human being. So it is literally something that you can do all your life in a developing kind of way. So
uh-huh,
in the way that people talk about studying martial arts, it's not just for the body and the skills, it's for the spirit.
mm,
Dog training is the same. Dog training is the same. And there's all kinds of ways of being good at it. And the goal for many of us that we never stop chasing is getting better. And in a
mm,
way, I say this at almost every Kynology event. but is literally the truth. It sounds good, but it's also literally the truth. Is one thing that Kynology does for me is it gets me around people who are better dog trainers than I am. And I
Yeah.
hope by being around them, I'll learn and I'll get better. Like ultimately, my goal is in 10 years, I'd like to know very much more about behavioral science and its relationship to dog
Mm,
training than I do now. And most of all, be able to explain it clearly for people. And
mm.
also, I want to be a better dog trainer than I am now because I ain't all that good. I know all kinds of people that are better than I am, and it eats me up, and I want to be as good as they are. And so what I do is I try to put myself around people who are a lot better than I am.
Nice. So looking back to all those years of training dogs, studying dogs, studying dog training, studying behavior, etc. What do you think is the best approach? Because you said like you would like to have a puppy or a dog again for yourself to train with.
Yeah.
Um, how to start? Where to start? Because then the funny thing is with dogs, most people get a dog, never had a dog before, get a dog, start training, and develop more or less. If we look at other animal training, this is not really the how people do it. Like you don't learn horse riding on a young wild horse.
Oh, it's
You
true.
learn on a school horse. And
I'd never thought of that. I'd never thought of
okay,
that. You don't learn horsemanship from quote
yeah,
unquote breaking a horse. You learn
yeah,
horsemanship on a Schulmeister. Yeah,
yeah,
you learn
exactly.
horsemanship on a
And
very experienced, very patient horse who will put
exactly,
up with your ass.
yeah.
Right. And you're exactly
We
right. You don't learn dog training that way.
when we were in California, Sabrina and me did this little horse riding um, adventure, and those were two old school horses, you
Yeah.
know, and they were like Sabrina's horse fell asleep and and even fell because it just knew the way perfectly. But different story. And also, if you do like eagle hunting or stuff like this, you're going to school to master it. To you have your master who will
Yeah.
teach you, who shows you before you get the first bird. And dog training is so different from all those other animal
I
training.
can't resist. I can't resist telling you another story. So when I
Go
met
ahead.
Riser, I had my first dog, who
Mm,
was a bitch of Kirschenthal breeding that I bought from a breeder here in the United States in about 1979. So
mhm,
this guy had Kirschenthal bloodlines from Karl Fuller, who was an old timey German Shepherd breeder in Germany, and it was one of the best dogs of my life. I mean,
mhm,
looking back, I think without exaggeration, it's one of the best dogs I have ever personally handled in my life. It was a really, really good dog. And I went to the seminar with Riser, took her, Riser did bite work with her, all that kind of thing. And there was some talk between Riser and Gunther Wasshausen, who was with him, about, yeah, this is an exceptional dog this stupid young American kid has got, right? And then later, my second mentor, a guy named Johannes Greve, who emigrated to the United States, we're sitting around drinking beer after training. He says, "Yeah, it's really too bad about your bitch." I said, "What do you mean it's too bad about my bitch?" He said, "Yeah, it's such a good one. It's really too bad." I said, "What do you mean?"
yeah,
He basically said, "Well, when you're older, you'll understand, right?"
yeah,
And what he
yeah.
was referring to is the idea that is because it was my first dog, I had already fucked her up, and I would
Mm,
continue to fuck her up, and she would never reach the potential she could have if she had been my third dog or my fourth dog or my fifth dog. Very, very true. And it speaks directly to what you're talking about. I had the bad luck of getting one of the best dogs of my life as my first dog.
mm,
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I went to the Europameisterschaft qualification trial with her to try to get on the American team. And I got a tracking score of about 12,
mm,
because the track was laid in a very unusual way. And after the first turn, not far from the first turn, she took another hard right. And I'd
mhm.
never seen a track laid like that. And so I
Ah,
assumed she was wrong, and I stopped her And the judge whistled me off instantly. And then at his first opportunity, particularly after he saw her obedience and her bite work, he came to me and said, "You're dumb. You're really dumb." And also, very many of the people at the trial came to me and said, "Nice bitch, you really fucked up the track." Like, she was on the track. And so I did not go to Europe, and everyone told me what a stupid young guy I was because my dog was on track. And I looked at her, and she was saying in every way with her body she was on track. And I did not believe her because I was in the back of my head thinking about the way tracks are usually laid. So
Yeah.
everyone told me how dumb I was.
What made it? Like what did it change in your thinking after this uncomfortable
Well,
event?
the message was something that people who train tracking dogs and detector dogs always say, which is believe the dog, right? Like, train the dog well and then believe the dog. And that's so much harder to do than you
Yeah,
think
it
it
is.
is, right?
Yeah.
And you need a lot of practice to do it. And so in both tracking and in detection, you need to run a lot of problems blind with no idea where the correct direction of the track is or where the target of your search is. And it's really hard to make yourself do that because it might get ugly and you'll be anxious and so forth. It's just really hard to exercise the discipline of working your dog blind.
Yeah, definitely. And but this is a different topic. I don't want to drift too far. So back to my initial question: will you get a puppy, or will you take like a pre-trained year-old?
Oh no, I don't want to get a pre-trained year-old dog, because I would like to. I haven't had my own dog from puppyhood on, where all of the mistakes are mine and all of the successes are mine. I haven't had that in a long time, and I'm not going to tell you it's because I don't trust anybody else to rear my dog, right? There are a lot of people out there from whom I can get a dog that's reared better than I can rear the dog, right? If I'm willing to pay the price. So it's not the case that, oh, I want the dog done just my way, because as I said, I'm not that good a dog trainer, and there's all kinds of people that can do it better than I can. But I just want to do it myself and see the effects of my growth, see the effects of my mistakes, see the effects of my mistakes. I just want to do that journey again. And I haven't done it in a lot of years. I haven't reared, I've trained a lot of puppies, but always for short periods of time for very specific purposes, and then given them back to, put them back in whatever situation they were brought to me in. But to train a dog from puppyhood to adulthood on my own is something I've not done in 25 years.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So it'll be a Belgian Malinois, I guess.
I have thoughts about a German Shepherd, because I started with German Shepherds, and a good German Shepherd is really hard to beat. And as a matter of fact, at a seminar recently in North Carolina, I saw a guy who had a really good German Shepherd dog, and I was like, oh, it'd be fun to have a good German Shepherd dog again.
I really thought about just buying a plane ticket, going there. I would have loved also to meet Jerry Bradshaw. And
yeah, Jerry's a cool guy. Jerry's one of the thinking people in dog training.
No, definitely. But I had my wedding on the 6th, so a good reason for staying
You have to
at home.
keep things in proportion, right? Like, dogs are here and other things are up here. We always do this, but it has to be like that.
Yeah. Keep the balance. No, I hope there will be another chance to do that.
Oh, there will be. We are scheduling. So back to Kynology talk. What's going on in Kynology? On April 14 to 18 of this year in Santa Rosa, California, we are having Kynology Symposium 4, which is 5 days of in-depth science and also practical. And the organization of the seminar is not, people come to the seminar with their dogs and try to advance their dog in the seminar. We use the dogs as models and examples and demonstrations to discuss principles of dog training that are derived from or illuminated by scientific data and scientific theories. So it gets pretty dense, pretty intense. People come not just one time, they come repeatedly because there's more that they can learn each time. So we're doing that April 14 to 18. And then we are also setting up at least one more event, which would be a similar event that would look at the science and the data of negative reinforcement, escape and avoidance, and then also the use of electric collar in dog training. So we are going to not teach a particular method. We're going to look at a spectrum of methods that are available out there and look at the ways that those methods dovetail or fail to dovetail, meaning lie parallel to findings from science, and then also discover ways in which, especially the use of electrical stimulation for aversive control in dog training, can be consistent with animal welfare, good animal welfare. And this is one of the points that the thing that I discuss from a scientific standpoint that few other people do is I explicitly talk about aversive control, how it works, the very large scientific literature that underlies aversive control, and then also some very surprising aspects of it, which I will contend indicate that if you look at the entirety of the dog's life, the animal's welfare for the entirety of its life, the welfare of its owner, the welfare of all the beings in the animal's community, in the community in which the animal lives, that aversive control conducted in a contemporary and a progressive fashion is fully consistent with the best welfare state for all three of these: the dog owner, and also the community in which they live.
Very interesting. Last time, like, you do understand German to a certain point, right?
Yeah, ein bisschen. Yeah.
I will send you the link to one of my latest episodes I did with Uwe Heiss. And
wer ist er?
Uwe is like he's a
Forscher,
maker.
Forscher oder?
No, he's a dog trainer. He's a dog
Praxis.
trainer, and
Yeah.
yes, practitioner, exactly. And he did, like, when he was interested into protection dog sports, he bought Hollandse Herder and did KMPV tests. And when he was interested into retriever work, he bought a retriever and
cool.
did some field trials.
Oh,
and
he's a cool guy. I already like him.
He is. And his main field is hunting dogs. And he's one of the biggest hunting dog trainers you could imagine in at least in the German-speaking countries.
Und der ist Deutsch oder Österreich?
Yeah, he's from Germany. He's living now in Austria, in Salzburg. But I had a very fine-tuned talk with him. Well, he was fine-tuned. I was just listening about e-collars, etc., because he used to use them. He also did some workshops in the Czech Republic because there it's not banned, but it is in Germany and Austria. But he's very thoughtful about it, and I'm sure, like, if you take the time, I could even send you like the time stamps.
Und spricht er English?
No, in this interview we're talking German, but I think he does understand English.
Er kann English sprechen?
Probably.
Okay.
I never asked him because why would I?
Well, I'd like to make contact, and my German is einerzeit sprach ich Deutsch, aber jetzt ich habe fast alle vergessen.
Yeah, sure.
So,
But for sure, this would be really interesting. Listening to you two guys talking about those things. And
well, then, I hope he hears about this, because what we're going to do, I think it will be November or December of this year. We will have an electric collar. I call it a summit. And what that means is it's not just me talking about electric collar or a particular guy who gets good results talking about electric collar. what we'll do is we'll get representatives of several different schools of
Mm,
electric collar training. There are people who use the electric collar to teach. There are people who only layer the electric collar over previously taught cues. There are people who introduce the electric collar at very, very low level. And then
mm,
there are other people who think that's a mistake and that it should be introduced at a meaningful level. And there
mm,
are people from each of these schools who do good work, who are effective dog trainers and are thoughtful people with strong arguments for what they do. And what we're going to try to do is get a bunch of people in a room and discuss science, discuss the data, and then discuss the practices and not decide who's right and who's wrong,
yeah,
but
yeah,
talk about the trade-offs that you make when you
yeah,
make
exactly.
methodological decisions. And the thing that I always say is that with every technical solution to a dog training problem comes at least one technical problem. And
Mm,
so when you adopt that technical solution, you have to understand what the weakness of the method is, what the technical problems that are going to be that are going to come with the technical solution, and then what your approach is going to be to harvesting all of the benefit of the technical solution and minimizing the blowback or the fallout of the
mm.
technical problems that come with that solution. And so it's in that kind of way that we would like to, that we're going to look at electric collar in November, December. And I really hope this gentleman, Uwe, and what's his last name?
Heiß,
Heiss. I very much hope that Herr Heiss is aware of it and will tune in and
definitely. I will let him
potentially
know about
enrich the
this.
conversation.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. So, Stuart, let's dive into some of the points that I think are really worth to dive into a little deeper. That we picked up on our last conversation, and that that think are very interesting. And also, like in our instructor class, I had a little workshop for our attendees to work on the omission cues, to work on the safety cues. Think about them. Think about, like, have we used them, just not thinking about it.
Oh,
And
you probably have, and in
yeah,
addition, dog training procedures, even if the handler is not specifically
mm,
providing secondary condition cues that can be omission cues, safety cues, all these kinds
mm,
of things. There are circumstances, signals, events, and stimuli available in dog training scenarios, including the feedback from the dog's own actions,
mm,
which provide all kinds of information about the incidence of rewards and punishments. In other words, they
mhm,
become Pavlovian signals for
yeah,
what will happen next. And they are the skeleton of dog training, whether we think about them or not.
yeah. And unfortunately, I'm a very slow reader, but right now I'm reading the book Science of Consequences. I'm sure you know it.
And
And
I don't know that exact one. It's there is a book I bought recently. I haven't read it yet. That has a title much like that.
mm,
Can you remember the author's name?
it's lying
Okay, yeah,
in
I
the
think
living
it's
room, but I put it to the show notes, and I will send you the title and author.
auf Deutsch
Um,
oder auf English?
no, English,
English,
English. Yeah,
okay. I
that's
wish
why
I
it
could
takes
read
me so long.
German as I wish I could read and speak German as well as you can read and speak English. But
Thanks.
on the subject of, so there are, when we talk about secondaries, so what a secondary is it's a Pavlovian signal, or CS, which predicts that something will happen, or importantly, that something won't happen.
Mm,
And we're very accustomed to talking about Pavlovian secondary reinforcers in the form of markers. And
mm,
markers can be terminal cues, and they can also be interim or keep going cues. And there are some very interesting. There are both marking and reinforcing aspects to secondary positive reinforcers, and and then uh, and then also there are positive punishers which secondary positive punishers, which are, for instance, if I use a prong collar to punish my dog for doing something wrong like this, and I tell him no at the moment that he does the wrong thing, and then after a small delay and probably some intervening behavior, I do this on his prong collar. That's a secondary positive punisher, and they have some
Yeah.
very, very interesting properties, and there's a ton of science about
Yeah.
secondary positive punishers.
Yeah.
And I won't go into it right now unless you want to. What you just pointed to a moment ago is both of the secondaries that I just mentioned are Pavlovian signals for something occurring. The two things that you mentioned, omission cues and safety cues, are Pavlovian signals that something will not happen
Exactly.
in a
And that's
context in which
yeah.
the animal expects them to happen. So
Mm.
in order to understand those, and this also is a mechanism, a learning mechanism that is buried deeply in dog training, and we cannot extricate it. It is there whether we make use of it or not. It is there. And it goes all the way back to Pavlov's studies in the basically directly after the Russian Revolution, and resulted in the publication of his 1927 book. So Pavlov, it's called Pavlovian inhibition, not because it takes place in Pavlovian conditioning, but because fucking Pavlov discovered it. And it has enormously important implications. So the idea is, my example that I use for a Pavlovian inhibitor is that if, for instance, I have my dog on the training field, there are all kinds of cues. So we're working off leash on the training field. There are all kinds of Pavlovian cues which are established as predictors of reward: the reward of running, the reward of taking things in the mouth, the reward of making prey, even the reward of successfully defending oneself, right? There are all kinds of signals on the field that predict from my person, if I'm the handler, the things I wear, the articles I carry, the commands I give, the place we are, everything. There are all kinds of cues that predict for the dog manifold reinforcements. Now, at the end of the session, when we are done, it's very common for me to take my leash and go click and put it on the dog. So the significance here is that all of the cues that predict positive reinforcers are there, and now suddenly we add another cue. And in the presence of that highly salient other cue, none of the reinforcers are available. The dog is taken back to the car. If you're not thinking about this and you're training dogs in a sort of an old way, you put the leash on the dog is taken back to the car, no more reinforcers. That turns the leash going on to the dog into a Pavlovian inhibitor that predicts,
Yeah.
I know you expect, based on
Yeah.
all these cues, I know that you expect that you will receive positive reinforcement of all kinds, but now in the presence of this cue, all bets are off. That turns that cue into an omission cue for all these positive reinforcers. And the thing that's important to realize is it's not just that every time you put your leash on your dog, that and nothing nice happens, that will make it a Pavlovian inhibitor. No, it has to happen in the context where reinforcement is otherwise expected. So if you go to your local bar and you're hanging out with your dog under the table and nothing exciting is happening except for every now and again you pet your dog's head, when you then put the leash on the dog because the manager asks you to leash your dog, it has no consequence. That does not turn the leash going on the dog into a Pavlovian inhibitor. It is when the dog is in a context where it expects reinforcement and an additional signal says, nope, no reinforcement, that turns the leash going on the dog into an omission cue for reinforcer. Go ahead.
And I love this example. So I think this helps myself and the audience to understand a practical example of something that happens unwillingly. So like, I think most people can picture this situation. Is I think still I haven't fully understood the omission cue. So maybe because I think about it too much. But the omission cue is not an announcement for a negative punishment, is it?
It is. So
It is.
so the two examples, I wrote myself some notes today before we got on air to discuss it. And the two examples that I was going to talk about a secondary negative punisher. So technically that's what we're talking about. It's a signal that says that something the dog likes is now not going to happen. Something the dog expects, given all the cues in the situation, is now not going to happen. That is a secondary negative punisher or an omission cue. The example that I just used is a particular kind of an omission cue called an end of session cue. And those of us who work with highly motivated dogs are very aware of the harmful effects of end of session cues, where you can't put your leash on your dog or because the dog avoids you, all kinds of things, right? That's a situation in which inadvertently there is an omission cue buried in your session, which can hurt you if you don't do something to control the destructive effects to your training. On the other hand, an omission cue that you can use to your good effect is a cue that you explicitly use to tell your dog to mark an error and tell the dog that because that error was committed, reinforcement is no longer available. And it is the mirror image of a secondary positive reinforcer.
Exactly.
It assigns the outcome, in this case, the outcome or the consequence, which is the surprising, the not receiving a positive reinforcer. It assigns that to a particular event, a particular behavior on the dog's part, and it will accomplish a learning function. It will accomplish a response suppressing function over a delay and over intervening behaviors, just like a secondary reinforcer will. So it's a secondary negative punisher. So we've talked about two kinds of secondary negative punishers, which are omission cues. One of them is an end of session cue, which if you're not careful can get buried in your training procedure and teach your dog to dislike, avoid, resist, become frustrated in response to that cue because it signals no more training. And then another omission cue is a marker that you use specifically to tell the dog that was a mistake and now you won't be rewarded. The interesting thing about these omission cues is that if you talk to a force-free trainer, if you talk to a pure positive trainer, they are essentially buying into the idea that giving rewards and withholding rewards is the use of a happy stimulus to train the dog with, and therefore you're never causing the dog any bad feeling. The interesting thing about secondaries that are omission cues is that they reverse the hedonic value of the event, right? So getting food produces a positive affective valence or positive emotions. A signal that tells you you're not going to get fucking food produces the opposite. That is a hedonic reversal. And so omission cue causes the dog, an omission cue when you say no to the dog or that was wrong to the dog, that causes an affective response that discourages the behavior that resulted in the omission cue. And then also when you do something like produce a leash to put it on your dog at the end of the session, and the dog is a particular kind of dog that responds very badly to frustration, then we shouldn't be surprised if things go wrong when you produce that leash and try to put it on the dog. In both cases, you're withholding a positive reinforcer, and in the act of withholding a positive reinforcer, you cause aversive or uncomfortable feelings for the dog.
And like we have used this announcement for negative punishment for years. I just have never heard the term of omission cue, but
Yeah.
I think that really irritated me. So what I think is also important for the listeners to point out that the omission cue will only work if we own the thing that the dog wants right now. Because if we aren't able to, oh man, in Austria it's evening already, so my brain is a little tired. Like if we don't own and if we don't handle, manage the resource that the dog is working for, then the omission cue might not work.
Yeah. So for
You know what I
instance,
mean?
if your dog chases wild animals.
Exactly. That's my example.
Yeah. If your dog chases wild animals and you decide, okay, I control this reinforcer, I control that reinforcer, I control this reinforcer. The next time he orients towards a wild animal, I'm going to make sure that I don't give any of those reinforcers. But unfortunately, the act of responding to a wild animal and pursuing the wild animal even a little bit probably is intrinsically reinforcing. So you can say no positive reinforcement for you, but there is positive reinforcement in this situation with the dog that you cannot omit. It is not in your power to omit it.
Yeah. So what I do with my young dogs is to condition this like click reward. I also condition the omission cue. And
how do you do that? How do you do that?
Yeah. So the good thing is with the punishers that we most likely need less repetitions to make the learner understand what he is about to await, because the brain just works better with punishments. And I, like with my pups, I take a slice of cheese or a slice of sausage, and I show it to the dog, and I let them have the first piece for free. So they are in the context where, like in the kitchen, for example, that they know, okay, there's yummy stuff around, and okay, now I get a slice of cheese or a slice of whatever. So they know what they could have. Then I play a little game, because I don't only want to let them fall into a mistake and receive a punishment. I also give them the chance to learn something good. So I hold it out of reach. And if they sit or have 4 paws on the ground and just watch me, they might get another slice of cheese. But if they are jumping up, I announce the withdrawal. So I say, oh yeah, take the cheese away, out of sight, show my empty hands.
Yeah.
So they learn that, oh yeah, means, I lost something.
Yeah.
And this is so powerful. And in most of my training...
You're doing something very interesting to me, because you're explicitly training your omission cue prior to using it for dog training.
Yeah, like
which is the recommended practice for using a secondary positive reinforcer. So you're explicitly using a procedure where you are creating your omission cue. And then the other thing that you're doing correctly is that you're doing it in a context where other cues predict the positive reinforcer. That is a situation that will drive Pavlovian inhibition and should rapidly turn that oye word into a Pavlovian inhibitor. Now, the thing that's interesting is that the learning that you will see, the condition response that you'll see in response to oye, can be very subtle or covert. So this is the thing about Pavlovian inhibitors. It's easy to see, normally in many cases, it's easy to see the conditioned behavior in responding to a Pavlovian exciter, salivation, excitement, all kinds of things. But Pavlovian inhibitors are much more cryptic, and they can be impossible to see unless you use particular procedures to reveal their effect. And so I normally just train my omission cue while I'm training, but I haven't, I let the dog figure out, hey, when I say the word wrong, you will not receive positive reinforcement. And he learns that in a context in which he carries out a particular action that he thinks is going to result in reward, and it doesn't happen. You're doing it a little bit more preemptively or proactively, just as you train, just as you quote unquote load or condition your clicker, you're also loading or conditioning your omission cue. And I think that's interesting. And it also sounds to me like the way you're doing it is consistent with data, with science. Like you're following science, you're doing it the right way. I don't know, maybe you can tell me if you've gotten better results from this than training Oye on the job, like on the job training of it. But I'm not aware of any science that would tell me that you'll get a better result doing it the way you're doing it. But I find it a very provocative idea.
I think I'm not sure if it's like a better learning if they know the signal before an actual exercise. You know, like learning that Oye means the withdrawal of something wanted. Doing this before the actual exercise, maybe it's fair for the learner, you know. And the
Michael,
other, I don't think there is a big benefit, but I just do it that way. I did not think about it before.
I'm very influenced by the work of Michael Ellis, with whom I also teach a lot. So, and Michael has a similar procedure in which he, when his dog is very young, when his puppy is very young, he goes to the crate, opens the crate, the puppy tries to come out. He says his equivalent of Oye, and he shuts the crate. And so he's teaching the puppy manners about coming out of the crate, but also this is his preparation. This is his situation for teaching the dog the omission cue of Oye. It means no reinforcement coming out of the crate. So in both these cases, you're actually conducting. Now, the cool thing about when you load or condition a secondary positive reinforcer is that you can do it in the absence of any response requirement. What I mean by that is you can kind of do pure Pavlovian conditioning. In other words, you don't really care what your dog does after you click. You just feed him because you clicked. You're not feeding him because he did anything, right? There's no response requirement. You just need him to notice the click and then notice that he's being fed, and in a Pavlovian way, associate those two events. And then your click will become a secondary reinforcer, and you can use it for marking and secondary reinforcer properties. Both of the examples that we've just talked about involve a little bit of a response requirement. Like you're kind of making your dog show the wrong behavior by jumping up towards your hand and marking it. And then Michael also is in a situation where there's an instrumental task, don't come out of the crate. Exactly. So in both cases, you guys are doing kind of what I do, where there is an instrumental response requirement in the situation that might draw the dog's mind away from learning the omission cue. Like a purer way of teaching an omission cue would be if you had a box or a situation that you put the dog in where the dog expects to be fed every 8 seconds, right? Click, feed, click, feed, click, feed, every 8 seconds. And then you say, oh yeah. And for 40 seconds, you don't feed the dog.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you go back to click feed, click feed, click feed, click feed. And that completely divorces it from any instrumental response requirement. You're just doing a pure Pavlovian procedure. And what you can anticipate is that the procedure would proceed faster. Your omission cue would be stronger, and it might potentially be more powerful as a way of helping your dog to understand exactly what aspect of his behavior is responsible for him not being reinforced right now. You see what I mean there? And we're
definitely. I think that's very interesting to think about it, because as you said, also the sit and stare exercise or staying in the crate is already an exercise. It just not has like the importance of, I don't know, healing, biting, detection,
No,
etc.
this is what's really fun for me is because one of the things we don't talk about, like the event that we're having in April, is a symposium. It's not a seminar, because seminars tend to be one-way conversations. And what we're trying to set up in this symposia is a situation where all of us think about and contribute to the conversation. And I have learned some very important things from questions that people asked me or comments that came up. And in a way, you highlighted, you made clear to me an important aspect of omission cues, which is I've always just taught them on the fly while I'm conducting exercises, training with my dog, right? You just told me your way of trying to separate training your omission cue from actually teaching exercises, but there's still an instrumental requirement. It's still not a perfectly, it's not a pure Pavlovian procedure, because you're looking at the dog's behavior as your indication as to what consequence to give him, what information to give him. Michael's procedure is the same. It's an instrumental procedure. That got me thinking about, if we wanted to follow the same procedure to teach our omission cue that we do with our secondary positive reinforcer, strictly Pavlovian, right? Click feed, click feed, click feed, click feed. Then we would have to put the dog in a situation where the dog expects frequent feeding or frequent reinforcement, and say, oh, yay, and then surprise him with a long period of not receiving the reinforcer. And that procedure is completely consistent with scientific laboratory methods of conditioning Pavlovian inhibitors, and it should result in strong inhibitory power assigned to the verbal cue, oh yeah, in the absence of any instrumental response requirement, right? Like you could wear goggles where you couldn't see anything. You could not see what the dog was doing, and you would go click feed, click feed, click feed, click feed. Then you would say, oh yeah, count 40 to yourself, and then go back to click feed, click feed, click feed, click feed. That should make, in the absence of any instrumental response requirement, that should make your word oh yeah a strong Pavlovian inhibitor for food. And I'd never thought about that before. Like it's like you just in effect asked me the question, how would I design a pure Pavlovian procedure for conditioning an omission cue? And that's my first idea, and I've never thought about it before. And that's why Kynology is cool, because when we talk to people, we teach each other things.
That and still, I remember the first half day of the symposium. I think it was the 2.0 one in Santa Rosa, where I could attend at least the morning of the first day. I really liked the concept and the style of what you built with the Kynology.
So well, you will have more chances, and you are especially invited to come. We will have a place of honor for you.
That's really nice. That's really nice, Stewart. So. Before we started today's conversation, we said we want to keep it a little shorter for today. So we already hit the 1 hour mark. But
let's keep going. Let's keep going.
All right.
Because I'd like to talk about two things. So we've talked about negative punishers, secondary negative punishers, or omission cues. Now let's talk about secondary negative reinforcers or safety cues.
Exactly.
Right? So,
but may I add one or two more things to the omission cue? So I don't know if you watched the video clip I sent you.
Not yet. No.
Okay. So I really like to train my dogs, and depending on the deployment, also deploy my dogs in detection, while having a toy, for example, or the kibble in my hands, because on the one hand side, I want to see that my dog is able to perform without just being like stupid for rewards, able to perform with the reward in reach. And on the other hand, to execute the omission cue is way easier if the dog sees the thing that he wants to have disappear after hearing the announcement.
I agree.
So
So what you
people,
do is, in a scientific terms, you're manipulating the imminence, which means how soon something will happen.
Yeah.
So when you take the reinforcer from your hand, where you deliver it after a marker, and you put it away in your pocket, it becomes less imminent.
Yeah.
And that's very punishing. That is super punishing.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to point out, and I'm interested about what you think about it, is when we train, I always tell our students, like, try to act like a Scandinavian, show no emotions, because
no shade on our Scandinavian friends, right?
No, not at all, not at all.
Shade.
But I think they have mastered many things in their nature.
No shade.
Yeah.
I try to be. There are times when I need to be much more Scandinavian than I am.
So, oye is I don't know what's a similar word in English actually, but oye means, oye is not really a word that you can take serious. Like it's like, oh no. And the reason
I was thinking about it, and I was talking about the desirability or the option to have two different markers. One marker is a secondary positive punisher.
Exactly.
Which is like a bad word. It means something unpleasant is going to happen to you now. And then the other one is a secondary negative punisher that means something good is not going to happen to you now. And I was talking to somebody about the German words nein and pfui, right? And I said, maybe you would say something like "fooey." That's your and they're like, no, "fooey's a really bad word," right? But if somebody says in English, "fooey" it's a soft word, it's a silly word, right?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
in a German speaker says "fooey" to his dog, he's getting serious, right? He's saying, no, don't do that.
Yeah. That's true. Maybe that's German, but so the reason why I've chosen oye is because people can't really say it with an angry delivery in the mood.
I'm gonna steal it. I think it's great.
So because what I want to have, I don't want my dog to think that I'm now the unpleasant component of the situation. I'm not the positive punisher, but I announce that something pleasant is being taken away. And that's the only thing. So our relationship is still fine.
It's also two syllable, right? So if you use yes, that's one syllable. If you use no, that's another one syllable. Oye is a two syllable. You can draw it out a little bit and help it to be very saliently discriminable from those other two cues if you're using verbal markers.
Yeah. And it's not a word of daily use. So
it's not a word.
I don't risk my dog being next to me and I say, oh yeah, and they
I can't
think they did something wrong.
I can't think of any commands that I often use. The only one I can think of is au pied, that ends on the same word, right? But my normal suite of commands, it sounds nothing like those.
No.
So
maybe
I think I might steal it from you. I like it.
I would be honored if you steal it. Yeah.
The English equivalent is wrong, which is a little effortful to say, and it doesn't have a good sharp consonant. So oye, you could.
But I think wrong for me as a not English speaker has a negative touch. So if I think of oye, you see a little toddler running around with his sand cake, and the sand cake falls on the ground, and that's like oye. So not really anything bad happened.
It's in English we'd say it's a lament. A lament.
Okay,
it means you cry to the gods a little, like, oh, that was unfortunate.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like it had nothing to do with me, but that was unfortunate.
Yeah. And I think that's powerful. Like a clicker has no other meaning like the clicker is delivering the emotion itself, but it's not nice to hear if you don't have a classical conditioning to it. It has no bad touch or no good touch.
Well,
And so I
let's talk
thought
about safety cues for a second, because
definitely that's the second point. Yeah.
a moment ago. So it's another class of very, very important Pavlovian inhibitors that are explicitly used by some dog trainers, or may exist in situations where aversive contingencies are used for dog training. And so a moment ago, what I said is something uncontroversial that force-free or pure positive dog trainers will readily admit, which is that not getting something that you want is unpleasant. So
Yes.
if I am working in a purely appetitive, what I think of as a purely appetitive paradigm, where I either give a positive reinforcer or I take a positive reinforcer away, you can get most people to admit that when you take the positive reinforcer away, or you give the signal that says no positive reinforcer will be offered, that is unpleasant. That is aversive, right? That's not controversial. Most people will admit it. So what we're pointing out is that a signal for a secondary negative punisher has the opposite emotional value that the punisher itself has, that the object you're using to train the dog has. So the food I offer the dog, if the dog experiences it, it is appetitive. It makes the dog feel good. The dog has a positively balanced emotional state. When I withhold it, or I give him a signal that I withhold it, that produces the opposite. That is aversive. That's not controversial. Everybody understands that, right? Now we get to safety cues, where it's a little more controversial. So when I discuss safety cues, we're in the domain of negative reinforcement. The two kinds of conditioned behaviors that pertain to negative reinforcement are escape and avoidance.
Yes.
Both of these are arenas in which safety cues can work, because what safety cues do is they predict a period of no aversive after an aversive has ended, or after an aversive has been avoided. So if you have a kind of a traditional viewpoint on negative reinforcement training, you think of the dog responding to reduce fear. You assume that, you assert that, you argue that the dog is behaving in a fearful state. The dog feels endangered, and therefore everything that he does is in order to either end discomfort or to end or reduce fear of discomfort. What safety cues do is they are a different kind of omission cue that says that for a given period of time, there will be no stressor, there will be no discomfort. What studies of safety cues have revealed is that does not just represent, for instance, in really highly developed avoidance responding, that doesn't represent, the safety cue does not represent to the animal the cessation or the stop of stress. What it represents is something much more positive. It represents this quality of safety. And so what I'm saying to you is that the cue that announces there will be no stress becomes very much like a positive reinforcer.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is why I like to make the point that an omission cue that says no positive reinforcer is unpleasant. Because after that, if you admit that, then I can get you to consider the idea that a dog working in very proficient avoidance maybe is not working to produce the offset of discomfort. What the dog is working for is safety cues, because the dog likes safety cues. And there is a bunch of evidence that safety cues work very much like positive reinforcers. Animals will emit responses preferentially to get safety cues that they won't to emit responses that don't provide safety cues. Safety cues can be used to train new behaviors. In other words, they're a lot like positive reinforcers. And this, in my view, I can talk about it more, but the best kind of dog training that uses all four of the quadrants of the contingency square, that uses not only positive reinforcement and negative punishment, but also uses positive punishment and negative reinforcement. The best kind of dog training produces dogs that are powerful, that are joyful, that are
Yeah.
expressive. And I think that they are powerful and joyful and expressive because they are working not only for positive reinforcers, but they're also working for safety cues.
Hmm.
And the way I relate that to human experience is I do a ton of work for safety cues because I used to be a whitewater boater, a kayaker. I was
Hmm.
also a skier. I've ridden motorcycles all my life. I still ride motorcycles. And so when you engage in these sports, you spend a ton of your money and a ton of your time looking for positive reinforcement. And for me, the most intrinsic positive reinforcement in a skilled activity that I learned in a background of risk. In other words, when I was skiing, I learned how to turn so I wouldn't fall. When
Yeah.
I was riding a motorcycle, I learned how to do this so I wouldn't fall. Well, I wouldn't do that, and so I wouldn't do that and fall. When I was learning to paddle a whitewater boat, I learned to not make that mistake so I wouldn't turn upside down, not be able to turn back up and take a very scary swim down a whitewater river, right? So these are skilled physical movements that I learned in a context of risk. And now the feedback, the proprioceptive feedback of engaging in these behaviors produces delight. I
Yeah.
love it. And so when I turn a motorcycle correctly, I know just when I turn the bike. When I just first start to turn the bike, I know I'm doing it right, and that feels good. And it still feels good in a situation which I am not at risk. So I can take my motorcycle out on a perfectly flat area where and ride it slow, and nothing is bad is going to happen to me. I'm perfectly safe. And still, if I'm practicing and I do the turn just right, I still get that jolt of reinforcement.
Mm.
And that's why I spend stupid amounts of my money to ride motorcycles, is because of that reinforcement and that safety cues. And what I'm introducing you to is the idea that dogs also experience these safety cues. So these are skilled movements that they've learned in a context where stress was a possibility.
Yeah.
And the dogs begin to, when they master the skill, they begin to work not just for the positive reinforcers that we dispense
Yeah.
to the dogs, but also they work for the safety cues that we may give them to
Mm.
tell them they're doing well and that there'll be no stress, or for the safety cues that their bodies give them when they do
Mm.
things just right. So for me, this is why, and I one of the topics of one of the focuses of the foci of concentration in kynology are the ethics and the welfare of dog training. And one of the contentions that I make is that if we assure the dog's agency, the dog's operant agency, and as much of the dog's choice agency as we can, if we teach the dog to be an expert escaper and an expert avoider of stresses that are used in aversive control, then we can conduct procedures that are not only efficient, have the results that we want, but also assure the dog's welfare.
Hmm.
And not only the dog's welfare, but for instance, the owner's welfare, the community's welfare, et cetera. So this is one of the ongoing conversations in kynology because it's an ongoing conversation in dog training throughout the world. It's like, is it ethical? Is it humane? Is it
Yeah.
efficient to use aversive control in dog training? Can we use aversive control in such a way as to protect the welfare of the dog? And something that I like to draw attention to is it's not just the dog's welfare that matters, it's the guardian's welfare, it's the community's welfare.
Yeah. I can't resist of asking, like I think the discussion is somehow tiring because we also accept use of force by the government to have a structured community,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
So we live in Western societies. We accept a certain degree of coercion, right?
yeah,
So, and I don't know if that's a word that your viewers and listeners will know who are speakers of English as a second language. But the verb is to coerce. Coerce. The noun is coercion, and it means to put
yeah,
pressure.
yeah,
And pressure can be the pressure of aversives that are offered. Coercion can also be the pressure of rewards that are taken away. And all of
yes,
us uh, I would almost, I was saying Western societies, I would have a hard time thinking of a society in which there wasn't a form of coercion, but I'll just talk about Western societies because I'm the
mm,
most familiar with them. If I drive my car too fast, I will experience negative consequences. If I drive my car drunk, I will experience negative consequences. If I commit battery on my neighbor, like we're having an
mm,
argument about parking cars in the street, and I poke him in the chest with my
mm,
finger in a threatening way, I can experience negative consequences, not just from him, but
yeah,
also from the state. And we
yeah,
accept this.
yeah,
We have decided that this is consistent with an equation in which we take everybody's welfare into account, right? So
yes,
we
yeah,
accept in our personal lives a certain degree of coercion. And at the same time, many of us say coercion has absolutely no place in dog training. And I
yeah,
do find that interesting
yeah.
because
It
for
is.
an,
It is very interesting. Yeah,
because for instance, one of very many of the people who say that coercion has no place in dog training, if you discuss their practices, they emphasize that the dog must be able to opt out of training, that the dog must consent to training, and that nothing about training can make the dog uncomfortable. So essentially, they're approaching the task of owning and training a dog with the idea in mind that their primary responsibility is to protect the animal from stress. Like above all, that's what you must do, is protect the animal from stress. Now, many of these people are parents. If you ask them what their primary responsibility is with their children, is it to protect them from all stress? Not many parents would say yes,
mm,
because all of us understand that we will die and our
yeah,
children will live on, and they will live on in an imperfect world in which stress is inevitable, disease is inevitable, unfairness is inevitable, discouragement is inevitable. Falling and hitting your knee because you're not following the safety rules at the local pool, all of these things are inevitable. And so
mm,
most of us understand our duties as parents are not to protect our children from all stress. Our duties are to teach our children to be equipped to handle the stress that will come their way. And if you meet someone who approaches their dog as though their job is to protect the dog from all stressors,
mm,
but they treat their children as projects of development to teach them to handle the normal stresses of life, I think that gives you a chance to start a conversation to say, why is your thinking so different with your dog than it is with your
yeah,
children?
yeah. The thing, I think, and it's very similar in Austria. Meanwhile, but I think one of the reasons why people think this way is self protection, because like the kids example, nowadays you're getting sued for everything, right? So you're not like, why did your kid did not wear a helmet while riding a bike or skiing or stuff? And if they fall and if they are hurt, you're confronted with all these legal um, things that you have as a parent that you have to stand through. And I think that
And that's
This
quite
might be a little reason for this hope that we could live in a stress-free, force-free community. But it's I think that's just a nightmare, actually, not even a dream.
well. I'll tell you a brief story, which is that I am very fond of an article I saw in the New York Times, which was about injecting risk back into British playgrounds. And
Okay.
and the story begins with a photograph of a young boy who is jumping off of a tower that he has built, and he's jumping onto a teeter-totter. And so the
Mhm.
little boy, I'll do it like this. He's jumping from this
Yeah.
side
Like a catapult.
onto this end
Yeah.
to make that end do that.
Yeah.
And on here, there are bricks. There are construction materials, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so when you look at the photograph, you go, uh-oh. I think this little boy might be about to get a lesson in physics, right? Like
Yes.
what goes up maybe comes down on your head. And the photograph was taken by some sociologists working on playgrounds in the United Kingdom, because maybe 20 years ago, they decided that they should protect children on playgrounds in the United Kingdom from all risk. And they made playgrounds completely safe, and they took anything out that could possibly hurt children. And
Yeah.
then 20 years later, they decided, oh, we think we have done children a disservice.
Yes.
Because we think that doing dumb things and getting hurt was maybe part of the normal development of Homo sapiens. And
Yeah.
when you don't have this, you don't grow up to be a normal Homo sapiens. You have problems, right? You have problems that you would not have. And so these sociologists had to go back to playgrounds in Britain and introduce boards, bricks, stones, things like that, and then take photographs of and videotape the consequences. And this is how I grew up. Like I grew up in the 70s in the United States, and I had accidents, and I had many lessons of physics. And my parents were no more overprotective or underprotected than any other American parents at the time. And I got what I thought was a very good education. And when I raised my daughter, I also gave her the opportunity to take physical risks. Now, I insisted she wear a bicycle helmet when she rode her bicycle, and that she wear a helmet when she rode her horse. But I fully expected that she was going to fall off of both of them and learn very important things, not just about equitation, riding horses, and about riding bicycles, but to learn physical confidence, the right mix of boldness and prudence, to learn escape and avoidance.
And I think it's like the very same, to come back to the dogs. I posted a video before Christmas, and there was the yellow Labrador I have right now that I prepare for an agency, and I made a little toy search, and he found the toy up of a pile of bricks, and he could have chosen the way down that where to step, but of course he was jumping down, and I got some very few bad feedbacks, like how could you let the little puppy jump down, etc. And like I would post the same video today again, but and definitely I would give these opportunities of experience to my young dogs, just to find out. And well, maybe sometimes the direct way might not be the best way. Like maybe it hurts a little bit, but it's a consequence of life. And
at some point, I will deliver some detailed lectures about the psychology of stress and also studies of animal welfare. And the history of the understanding of stress has gone essentially from the idea that physiological and psychological stress is bad in any amount, to the understanding that a certain amount of physiological and psychological stress is part of the normal development of organisms, and that they do not develop normal competence if they do not have experience with stress. And so if you asked me what my job is with my child, I would say to make sure that my daughter has contact with normal stressors and that she has access, she experiences lack of success, but that
Mm-hmm.
she does so in such a way that in the end, she is successful because I've equipped her to be resilient and capable and stubborn about persevering in the face of
Yeah.
hardship, so that she develops a lifelong sense of control over what happens to her, because it's a sense of control that provides protection from stress, not never experiencing any stress. And I recently I did an event, a teaching event, with a lady named Daisy Peel, who is very prominent in agility competition. And
Is she on your website
yes, she
on
is. She is. And so
the
she is,
collaborators? Yeah,
she's
nice.
very prominent in agility. And I don't know
Mm.
how agility works in Europe, but in the United States, it is it's sort of a gathering place for very many people who are very concerned that their dogs never experience stress or negatives.
This was so
And
weird.
many of them work with dogs that are very sensitive to begin with, like border
Yeah,
collies and animals like that.
exactly. Yeah.
And so the animals have very difficult discrimination problems to engage with while they're running very fast in a very excited state on an agility course. You have to learn to do the right thing, instead of doing the wrong thing. And one thing that is rather controversial in agility is whether or not you can tell your dog no, whether or not you can tell your dog, oye, you did that wrong,
Mm.
you won't be reinforced. And I, when I was told that, I said, really? That's an argument? That you can't use a secondary negative punisher with an agility dog? And some people don't think you should do it, that the dog should somehow be trained so that he never makes any mistakes, so that he can learn from the consequences of mistakes, and so
And
that he can engage in discrimination learning. And then I saw some dogs that were so sensitive that if you said oye to them once, meaning no positive reinforcer, you can't keep running anymore, you have to stop, you have to try that again. If you said it once, you saw stress. If you said it a second time, you saw a lot of stress. And if you said it a third time, they were gone. They run to the door of the arena. And so for me, you're not using the dog's entire nervous system to help the dog understand what is the desired behavior. You're leaving out half of the information. And then also, I wonder if a dog is so sensitive to the stress of a signal for no reinforcer, I wonder how the same dog is when there are fireworks. How is the
yes,
same
yeah.
how is the same dog when he has to go to the veterinarian and he's in pain and
Yeah,
strangers
yeah.
and strangers hold him and restrain him? How is the same dog if he has to go on a long trip to places he's never been before? And how is the same dog under any kind of stressor? So my thought is that when you rear a dog that is so sensitive that it responds to the aversiveness of a secondary negative punisher by running for the door, that you have not prepared that dog for life, because stress
Exactly.
also comes to a dog's life. You cannot protect a dog from all stressors. Like in
Yeah.
the United States, we have the 4th of July. What everybody does on the 4th of July is they set off fireworks. So I live in a little neighborhood in Texas, and it sounds like a war on the night of the 4th of July. And it starts sounding like a war on the 3rd of July, and it still sounds like a war on the 5th and the 6th. And there's nothing that can stop Americans from doing this, right? Like it just, laws don't do it. Americans are going to do it. And if you have a dog that is A, sensitive to noise, and B, doesn't handle stress well, you dread the 4th of July all year long. Nobody can stop it. Your dog will experience this stress.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like also, this is what I
Kind of
wanted
like
to
your
add
kid's going to
before.
go to college. You're going to raise your kid, then your kid is going to go to college or university or whatever they call it in Europe. and you will not be able to protect them. It is hard. It is stressful. And if you've not told them to endure, if you've not taught them to endure stressors, be resilient under stressors, and how to control stressors, then they will be helpless, and you have not served them well. And I think we can make the same mistake with our dogs.
Definitely. And you see this too often, so to say. There are a few things I would like to comment before, or maybe let's do it easy. So back to the omission cue. When we do the oye, for example, like we have a rule of thumb. We only, like I give the dog an omission cue and execute the consequence, withdrawal of something wanted. Wait a few seconds that feel like forever, even though it's maybe just 5 or 10 seconds, and just let the situation rest. And then the dog gets a second chance. But the important thing is that the exercise where the dog has just failed is set up the exactly same way as before, to see if the dog understood why I punished it. Like, is the dog now choosing the right way or still failing? And if I have a second a second punisher, then I think, okay, what was my last successful repetition? Where did I fail now? And how could I add a bridge to build up this behavior? And the dogs understand.
And I would say, when you say add bridge, I would use the expression reduce criterion, back off on criterion.
Yeah. But not totally reduce it. But I think of what they could do before and what was now not able to do, and where could I reduce criteria, but not make it ridiculously easy, just for the sake of a reward.
So your rule, your protocol is, if I've marked lack of success, if I've used my omission cue once, I won't change anything.
Exactly.
And ask for the behavior again, because if I change anything, I'll lose some information. Right? Like I won't, I may have the chance to see the animal understand completely what it did wrong and change the behavior, in which case I've lost a chance for a full success. And also I've lost a little piece of critical information.
Yeah.
But then you will not do the same thing a third time. You reduce criterion to raise the dog's probability of success. Yeah, I think that's very good thinking.
And like the execution of this proves us right, so to say, because we, on the one hand, we see that dogs take advantage of the first punisher they get. Sometimes we have a second punisher, and then we just ease up the criteria. But what I think is so beneficial is that the dogs understand and learn how to deal with stress, and how to deal with the opposite of success, just failing.
Yeah.
And they're not totally messed up. And the funny thing was about the behavior that just happens. So my dogs, for example, my Malinois, in the context of detection, when I spell oye, he would immediately come back to the middle position, because that's where we will start from again. So he wants
let me try again.
Let me try again.
And another option, and this is something that Daisy is beginning to introduce to agility, is the idea that if the animal perseverates, which is something that agility dogs are very prone to doing because they love to jump, right? So there's a lot of intrinsic reinforcement in jumping.
Yes.
So if the animal perseverates, meaning you say, oh yeah, he does the same thing again. You say, oh yeah, he does the same thing again. Another level is that you increase the consequences of the omission cue, which is the animal is removed to another location, which is a non-reinforced location. So it can be a pause table in the corner, right? So it's kind of like, if I say oye twice, on the second oye, you're going to the table where nothing good happens. And you'll have to wait there for a while. And then you can come back out. So go ahead.
I think I'm totally with you. And what I think many people did wrong and built some problems that are not necessary is that people put the dogs to the car. So they created the car as a environment of not discomfort, but not being able to work for success. And I actually want the car, the crate in the car, to be a neutral or at least a chill out area, so to say, you know.
So what Daisy's doing is she has a pause table in a particular place in the arena, which is, as we joked about it, the bad juju table. So when you get sent to the bad juju table, you have to stay there. No positive reinforcers
like
are
go
available.
to the corner and think about
go to the corner. No positive reinforcers are available. And if you and as it essentially, it's one way to guard against the animal learning to use the oye as part of the controlling cues for the exercise. In other words, extract information from you every time in order to do the exercise correctly, because ultimately you want the dog to respond to correctly on the first command, and they can learn pretty quickly to do the command in to carry out the skill, the exercise, in a less than an ideal way. You make an adjustment, then they do it perfectly, and pretty soon you realize that the oye, or whatever the additional information you give, is part of the controlling cue for the exercise. Like the dog will keep doing it for the rest of his life. And so that was in years past, that was the role of compulsion. That was the role of coercion. And sometimes it can backfire very badly. And this idea of having an omission table, which is a place you have to go that is not associated with positive reinforcers at all, is the consequence for not listening to the oye and changing behavior.
Yeah, that's good. Because, and that's one of the tricky parts with the negative punishment, if I withdraw something that the dog wants, sometimes few dogs actually, I think, who do not really understand the consequence or understand it very well, they would turn around and look for something else to find joy. So if you don't have a certain position to put the dog, like this table, or my dog who finds its position next to me because he knows that the next exercise or the next triad will only start from here. This needs to be controlled.
And if you think about your Malinois, when you say whatever the task is he's engaged in, if he makes a mistake and you say, oh yeah, and he instantly resets to the start position, and you give a command and then he succeeds, the cost to him of the error is very small. It's a little bit more work and a very slight delay to reinforcement. And so if you find that the dog perseverates and is making you say, oh yeah, again and again and again, or to put it another way, you're on many of your first commands for that exercise, he's not doing it correctly and you have to say, oh yeah, then one way you should think to yourself is, I need the omission cue to predict greater loss of reinforcement. And
the problem,
a higher consequence. And so you inject a greater delay, and then also you prevent the animal from doing anything that is conditioned to reinforcement, because the instant the dog resets on his start place, that's a cue that is positively reinforcing. That's a secondary positive reinforcer for the reward that he normally gets at the end. So one consequence of having an omission location or an omission context that you put the dog in is you inject a longer delay to reinforcement, and you also rob the dog of progress through the exercise towards positive reinforcers. It's quite a strong punishment.
Yeah, it is. It is very punishing, actually. And interesting enough, I think there are examples where a positive punishment is like the dog. If I would ask my dog, I think they would sometimes prefer a positive punishment instead of a withdrawal of something they want.
We talk about it in Kynology. We've all known dogs that you could use a positive punisher on and the dog was not dangerous. But if you tell the dog, no reward for you,
Mm-hmm.
the dog can get very dangerous.
Yeah. Stewart, I don't want to stress our relationship now.
Okay.
So,
and I don't want to stress my marriage, and I have something I'm supposed to go do.
Yeah, same happening here. So, if you're willing for a third session in the next few weeks or months, then I would.
We can do that, because I want to talk about something else, which is quite dense and quite detailed. You mentioned a topic, surprise driving learning. And
yes,
we didn't get a chance to talk about that. And it's fascinating. So I'd like to get together and talk again.
Wonderful. Still I have 2 more things to go. And this is the question from my last guest. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
I have my guests always
this is wonderful.
pose a question.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
Yeah.
I love this. That I forgot that you do this. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. And I have to send you the answer from the guest who came after your first.
Yeah, you do. I can't even remember what the question was. I
will find it out, and I will definitely send you this. But so my last guest who left a question was Dennis Marshalik, and he is also a hunting dog trainer, and he's very innovative. We have invited him and his team for a very cool workshop now in March. He's from Eastern Germany, so he has a funny dialect. But so the question that he left here.
Are you saying Germans would not say an Austrian guy like you has a funny dialect?
Oh, they would. But
the
Eastern Germany is very special. And the interesting thing is, I think Austrians understand it better than Western Germans. Yeah. But so I'm reading and trying to translate it. So he's, as I said, he's a real hunter. He's a hunter. He's a hunting dog handler. He's a hunting dog trainer. And there's a lot to learn from him. But his question, he opened it up for any breeds, any branches in working dogs. How should breeding dogs develop for the future?
Huge question.
Yes.
So the first one is for us to understand that our traditional model for breeding has hurt dogs instead of helped dogs. Mm-hmm. So if you think about the history, there prior to the late 19th century, there were such things as breeds of dog, but they were traditionally hunting dogs or other dogs that belonged to aristocrats.
They were like niches, different niches.
Say again?
A different niche of. Is this an English word? Like a niche in German is
niche.
Yeah.
So the niche for pure-blooded dogs was being the status symbols and the pastimes of very, very wealthy people. Yeah. And other people didn't have purebred dogs. They had varieties of dogs. So people from the middle class and the working class had terriers, they had shepherd dogs, they had farm dogs, they had all kinds of dogs. And these dogs were not purebred races normally. They were regional variants of dogs that had functional characteristics and also regional characteristics, but they were not controlled by stud books. And probably the degree of outbreeding was greater. So the kynologists of the late 19th century fell in love with shepherd dogs and with terriers and all kinds of things like that. They were often people in the middle class who had money to invest and to play with. And they decided, these wonderful dogs, let's call them German Shepherd dogs. So we're going to make them a pure breed, and we're going to decide what is the best German Shepherd dog. And then we are going to spend the next 100 years making them the ideal dog, the best dog possible. We're going to protect the breed. And the first thing that they did is they restrict the stud book and they restrict the genes. And this is what we did with breed after breed after breed. And the result is that purebred dogs are very often less healthy and have more problems than mixed dogs, than impure dogs. So the first thing that we have to recognize is that our traditional model of dog breeding was only good for 60 years or 50 years or whatever. And now, despite all of our efforts, what we're doing is we're hurting our purebred breeds of dog. And so one of the first things that we have to do is begin to develop the means to restore the health of the dogs that we love and that we keep. And that probably involves giving up some of the control of type that we exert by restricting our stud books.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing is to begin to develop new methods for creating the type that we want behaviorally and morphologically that do not rely on heavy inbreeding.
Mm-hmm.
For the same reason. So I think that if we're going to have another 100 years of the breeds of dog that we love, and that the dog's future will be bright, and that they will become more healthy and more vital and more valuable, I think probably stud books will have to open. And
Mm-hmm.
also breeders who are in the private domain are going to have to cooperate with each other more in order to reduce the overall inbreeding coefficients in their dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So I would answer the question that way. Realize that the
Yeah.
last 100 years of dog breeding has not necessarily served our purebred dogs well.
Yeah.
And that fundamentally we may have to give up our practices of inbreeding and our practices of never outcrossing our personal bloodline or never outcrossing our beloved Malinois to another breed
Mm.
of dog or our beloved German Shepherd to another breed of dog.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a very, I think, can a topic be urgent?
Urgent and also uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because none of us, if we have a bloodline of dog that we've had success with, but we begin to worry about the closeness of the pedigrees and inbreeding,
Yeah.
what we must do is breed out. And we understand as soon as we breed out, we will lose type, which means we will probably lose quality. We will
Mm-hmm.
likely gain health, but we will lose type. So it's a very hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to expand too much, but there was I had some interesting thoughts after a discussion about the breeding and non-dog breeding, but cow breeding that was mastered because we made like milk machines compared to what a normal cow gave milk and what a milk cow gives nowadays. This is crazy. So I think actually, not to say that this is about welfare or this is good or ethical, but I think as humans we obviously had success in breeding, but maybe we could do it smarter, not just in dogs, but now talking about dogs. So I really hope that we will.
Well, beef and dairy cattle especially are the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Because if you analyze the data for how many male dairy bulls are used to produce all of the dairy cow offspring, it's shocking how small the number of bulls are that are the progenitors for all of the young heifers and the young steers, right? The young bulls. And so I don't know much about the dairy business. I don't know about the health consequences of this level of what's called the founder effect, where a very small number of originating male animals have a disproportionate influence over the genetic population, the genetic makeup of the breed or the variety or whatever. I don't know much about health in cattle, But what I do know is that we're probably not tracking the health outcomes of dairy cattle and beef cattle in the last half of their lives, right? Like, we don't give a shit with beef cattle because they're slaughtered. With dairy cattle, I don't know. But with dogs, we're vitally concerned in the animal's welfare in the last half of their life. And that's where we disproportionately see the health impacts of inbreeding. So what I'm saying is that the level of inbreeding is extraordinary in some agricultural animals, and I don't know what the welfare outcomes of inbreeding are for these animals. I definitely have more information about the husbandry impacts on welfare for cows, chickens, and hogs. And there's an entire science of animal welfare that is devoted towards understanding the welfare consequences of the way we keep these animals that are vital to our economy. And what's interesting is that the welfare metrics that are applied to agricultural animals are different than the welfare metrics that we see applied to dogs in the journals that we read. So basically what I'm saying is that the same people who are implying implicitly or explicitly that our job is to protect our dog from all stress, they're eating veal, they're eating pigs, they're eating pork, and they're eating chicken in populations of animals with, in some cases, across the board, really, really poor welfare, and with standards that are adjusted for the species of animal. Right. So what is understood to be good welfare practices in cattle and sheep and hogs is not necessarily what we're told to strive for with dogs. Why? Because we have a different relationship with dogs. And this is one thing I like to point out is that welfare is welfare. And if we strive for welfare in a domestic animal that we spend a lot of time with, we should also strive for welfare in domestic animals that we eat. And we shouldn't have different standards. And interestingly enough, the standards for welfare in agricultural animals focus on prediction and control, not preventing all stress. The standards of welfare for dogs tend to neglect prediction and control and look at eliminating all stress. And I think that it is, when we look at what science says, what the science of animal welfare says about dogs and dog training, we have to understand that the standard that we're given for dogs is different than the standard for the industry and the science as a whole. Because dogs are thought to be special, right? The people who are saying you mustn't ever do anything unfair to your dog or stressful for your dog, they're wearing leather belts, they're wearing leather shoes, they eat meat, they eat chicken, and they're either not thinking about the way those animals are reared and cared for, or they think dogs are special.
Yeah, big topics,
Yeah,
but
huge topic.
Yeah. So, Stewart,
yeah,
what is your question for my next guest?
My question is this, and this is one that I make my prediction on commonly. So I have my own personal opinion. But my question for your next viewer is, where do they think dog training is headed? In 20 years, are we going towards, and I have one of two ideas, are we going towards a universe, a dog training universe, in which no one uses any procedure with a dog that is not positive reinforcement or negative punishment? Are we headed towards a universe in which all four procedures or quadrants of the contingency square are used: positive reinforcement, positive punishment, negative punishment? All four of them are used. And which one of the, where are we going? Are we going to
Okay.
force-free training for everybody? Are we headed towards a situation where we get through the difficult politics of the moment, and eventually the standard becomes that that the most professional dog trainers use and teach methods that feature aversive control, but that the use of aversive control is as sophisticated as the use of positive reinforcement and negative punishment? That's my question. Where do you think we're headed?
Perfect. Yeah. So anything else that you would like to
Nothing
announce?
other than I'd like everybody to be aware that there's going to be a major Kynology event that we're going to teach. I'll be teaching with Michael Ellis and Forrest Mickey in Santa Rosa, California, April 14 to 18, 5 days of science and dog training, very progressive dog training that does feature the use of aversive control. We'll discuss progressive aversive control. We'll discuss animal welfare. We'll discuss ethics. We'll discuss technique. We'll discuss science ad nauseum. There will be a virtual option so people can sign on virtually to watch the event. And then also they will have continued access to the video of the event for a month after the event. So in other words, if you are in a different time zone, if it's night where you are during the daytime in Santa Rosa, you can still watch this seminar. You can still ask questions. You can still post commentary. We will not necessarily directly respond to these in real time, but comments and questions will shape the direction of our discussions and our symposium. So I hope as many people as possible tune in. If you're interested in the kinds of things that I talk about and in attending one of these events, go to kynology.org. Start yourself a community membership, which is free. You just log in, assign a password, and then you'll be aware of all the events that are going to happen associated with Kynology, and be aware that there are plans for other events. In particular, in November or December of this year, we will have a major event centering on the use of electric collar, looking at the different theories and schools of electric collar use, look at the ethics and the welfare concerns of this kind of training, and also look at the different trade-offs between technical solutions and technical problems. It's not going to be a discussion about who's right and who's wrong. It's going to be a deep discussion of the technique of dog training.
That's going to be great. And my last question is, when will the online recordings be available?
They will be available from the beginning of the event. In other words, it will be live stream.
Yeah, live stream, but the recording is also available immediately.
Yeah,
Okay,
so we will live stream it, but we will also record it. And anybody who registers for the event, both the in-person attendees and also the virtual attendees, they'll all have access to all the video of the event for a month after the event.
Perfect. So I will put that to the show notes. Everyone can register for Kynology and everything that will happen after that. Hopefully, I will be able to visit you guys in person for some future Kynology event.
I really hope so. Try to keep your. We will assign dates for the Electric Collar Summit, either sometime in November, December, probably early November or early December. We'll assign dates very soon. If you become a member, we will send out an announcement. If you can, keep those days open in your calendar.
Great. So yeah, I hope that we will talk again this year, probably online. And thanks again, Stewart, for your time.
Thank you very much.
I hope you have.
It's always a pleasure.
A wonderful Sunday. Yeah, it was great. It was really great. Goodbye and take care.
Thank you, and goodbye, and thank you for listening to all the listeners and the viewers. I hope to meet you in person at some point soon. Thank you.